The Gifted, Episode 8, Threat of Extinction. So this episode was actually really awesome. It sucks that I saw it a week late, but I realized at the end of the episode it didn't even make a difference, because unfortunately, we actually don't have an episode coming out this week, which really surprised me. Like, there were shows that were premiering, like, there's actually 2 shows that premiered on Thanksgiving last week, some CW shows, so I was really surprised when I got to the end of this one. I was like, oh man, I'm a week behind. And I was thinking, I'll get to watch this episode, and then I'll be like, I'll get to watch the next one tonight. And it's like, nope, I still have to wait a full week to get the next episode. But this is a great episode to leave off on. I mean, some of the stuff that happens in this was definitely amazing. We get to see a bit of a flashback to the twins that were being looked up. I think it was at the end of either the very first or second episode. And we find out that those 2 twins are actually the great-grandparents of Andy and Lauren, and I thought that was insane. And I figured there would be, some way where it was like, oh, Reed is, the mutant gene kind of skipped over him, and his kids ended up being mutants and stuff like that. And I just assumed that because of the fact that his father worked for Trask and all that stuff. And I was like, okay, it came from somewhere, and they haven't really touched on. They've mostly focused on Reed's kind of lineage as far as, like, his mother as well as his father. So I was like, it's probably going to be there. I didn't expect it to turn out the way that it did, though, where not only was Reed's father a mutant, but so was Reed until that point where he had this memory, where for him, it was just, I was so sick I almost died, and my dad never even bothered to show up. That was actually his dad making a serum to suppress the X gene permanently too, and I thought that was insane. I was like, wow, it actually worked. It wasn't some minor suppressant. It was, it even says it had to be before the powers actually manifested. But yeah, that was just nuts to me. I was like, wow, I cannot believe that Reed was a mutant, but his powers were suppressed and they were gone forever. So his kids now have the powers that his grandparents had, and I thought that was really cool. So that was just awesome. I love that whole revelation, him meeting his father, finding out that his dad was a mutant. Unfortunately, his father gets killed at the end of the episode, so that was kind of sad. And he had a cool power. It was almost like a nuclear blast a little bit. It was, the way that it looked, the energy is what, typically I feel like is shown when it's nuclear based or something. But it was just a giant blast. He blows out the front of the store and knocks a bunch of people out. But unfortunately, he's killed in the process, but he's able to kind of, shoot that one blast off. Thunderbird unfortunately has to deal with the fact that his friend actually does get killed at the end of this episode as well. So they had a great scene where they're burying, one's burying his father, one's burying his best friend, and they're burying them right next to each other. And that was actually a really good moment at the end of the episode. It's just this revelations and reflections on just everything that has been, in their lives, and the things, especially, in Reed's case, that he never even knew about himself. So I thought that was really cool. It was probably my favorite storyline, just for the information that we got, the revelations and stuff like that. So that was definitely really awesome. Of course, we still had a lot of stuff going on with the more current timeline or storyline as far as the secret, hidden mutants and stuff like that, which is very interesting. We get to see, it's supposed to be just this simple pickup sort of rescue missions. We get these people, bring them back, and everything's all said and done. And it turns out that one of the mutants that's there, who ends up having super speed and was actually pretty difficult for them to trap, she is actually one of these secret mutant agents or whatever, these sleeper cell agents. And it was pretty cool. I liked the way that storyline played out. Her having super speed in general was actually really cool in the beginning, because she was just beating everybody up, because having super speed is like having super strength as well. So Thunderbird, there wasn't much that he could do, but then they end up trapping her, and then, they team up. It was Blake opens up a portal, Thunderbird jumps through, and Marcos has, has her, trapped in the middle of 2 lasers. So it's that was actually kind of cool, the way they, played around with that. But they end up capturing her, and then they find out that what basically happened to her with Sentinel Services really screwed her up. She can't speak, she's not able to communicate with them the way that she wants to, but they're able to get the telepath that was able to kind of sense something was going on with her. They use her, and it's hey, can you help us find out what's going on? So we find out that this woman lost her husband, they took her child. They didn't say they killed her child, but they killed her husband, took her child. So I don't know if that'll have a factor in the future, but killed her husband, took her child, and then basically, messed with her mind. So they get that information, and unfortunately she ends up dying at the end, because just all the stress and everything like that. So once again, sad. It was just like a lot of random little sad things in this episode of like people getting killed or just naturally dying. So they get the information, they get the Trask Industries and stuff, they get the building and everything like that. So that seems like what the promo was showing is that that's probably where they broke into, was actually Trask Industries. So that seems like it's going to go pretty bad, and that's where we'll get to see Lauren and Andy actually combine their powers for the first time. So that should be awesome next week. But I really love what they did with this. We got to see a bit more of Marcos and Polaris, or Eclipse and Polaris, having their argument. Ultimately, in the end, it was like, man, we just saw someone else die. Kind of wipes away all the random little issues that they were dealing with. It's like, yeah, we got more important things going on here, and that's like the security of the entire mutant race. So I thought that was cool. I'm sure it's not gone, because I'm sure that he will get another call in the future, and they'll probably work on that together instead of him just taking off and lying about it. They'll probably actually work on it before he leaves, or they'll find some way to handle it. But just everything in this episode I thought was pretty cool. It was just like, here's these little bits of stories here and there. Blink had her own little storyline where she has to, she tries to help like this young girl, and she finds out that this young girl was at the foster home as it was attacked, and she's like, crap, I did this to this little girl. So she ends up going to Dreamer and saying like, hey, can you just wipe this memory from her head so she doesn't have to live with that. And like, I have to come to you to ask because it's my fault, but I can't do anything about it. So I thought that was a good scene as well. But all in all, definitely a fun episode. Well, I shouldn't say fun. It was a great episode, revelations and all that stuff. Can't say it was fun though, because it was just like, I haven't seen my dad in, like 20 years or something like that. And then I finally see him. I learned all this stuff about myself and him and my grandfather, and like how my kids, end up being mutants when, neither myself or my wife are. And it's just like, man, not only did he have his powers taken away from him, but he grew up thinking that his dad never really cared about him and stuff, and just like all this, and then his dad dies at the end. It's like, well, that's depressing. Thunderbird is like, dealing with his friend, seeing his friend again, which they make a reference to it early, which I thought was cool. They did it in 2 of the different stories throughout the episode, but they talk about this mutant drug. I forgot what they called it, but it basically enhances your powers and stuff. I think that's what the scientist, Dr. Campbell, I think that's what he's using to enhance, or to basically control people's powers, because it's like, he gains a bit of control over them, but that's how he utilized it. Because before he, injected him, like, he was looking at it like he looked like he was insanely tired and stuff, and I think that had to do with withdrawal. So he felt insanely tired physically. His body wasn't, kind of keeping up. So when he sees him like pull out the needle and he's like, yeah, like, please inject it into my neck, that was the drug. That's like him being on that high. So I think that's what they're utilizing to control the mutant. Well, that's a part of it at least. Like, that makes them better weapons to, use the drug on them. But it's another way to kind of keep them in line. Because I'm sure there's something else that they use to, kind of control them in the first part. Because it's not just the drug. Like, it's not just that simple. So there has to be other steps to it. But they utilize the drug, so they have to kind of, counteract that a little bit, which they do with the woman who has super speed. So I thought that was really cool. It was like, it comes from this mutant drug that enhances people's powers and stuff like that. So they kind of combine that with whatever else they're using to mentally control them, and it kind of keeps them in line, because they get controlled, and then they're basically drug addicts as well, which makes it easier, because it's like their body wants them to be under the control of the drug, and that keeps them under the control of Sentinel Services. So I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, that's an interesting way to kind of add to the manipulation of the mutants that they have under their control, is this power enhancing ability that also feels like a legitimate drug to them. So I thought that was a cool way to do it. An interesting little revelation. I don't know, what they can do to kind of taint that supply, or how that could affect things in the future as far as control. But I'm looking forward to that, because it got introduced, so it's definitely going to come back later, where they have to have like antidotes almost to this drug, or find a way to just cancel out its effects, as far as like enhancing their powers. I don't know how you cancel out drugs, but it's a fake drug, so I'm sure they can make up a reason. But definitely looking forward to how some of that is going to affect future episodes, and some of the other sort of sleeper cell mutants being thrown in by Sentinel Services. But all in all, definitely a good episode. Looking forward to the next one, where it seems like things are really gonna get crazy. Like, they go somewhere. If it's not Trask Industries, I don't know where they could be, but it seemed like quite a few people went in on this mission, and it starts to really fall apart. So I can't wait to see how that ends up playing out. But of course, I would love to know what you guys thought about this episode. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know what you guys thought about the revelation of Reed's whole lineage. Like, he was a mutant whose powers got taken away from him. His dad was still a mutant. His grandfather as well as his great aunt, were both mutants. And now his kids have their same abilities. And if they combine them, that can lead to some pretty devastating stuff. So I would love to know what you guys thought about the revelations there. Did you see it coming? Did you see part of it coming? Because I figured his dad was probably a mutant. That was the one thing I thought. I didn't think that he was a mutant. I just assumed, oh, it skipped over him and went to his kids, and he didn't know his dad was a mutant. I didn't think that his dad was a mutant, as well as him being a mutant, and the twins that they've talked about before were also related to them. I thought that was a random thing where it was just like, oh, siblings who are born with powers can typically can combine those powers. I didn't think that it was going to be like these twins were, the great-grandparents of Lauren and Andy. So that I didn't expect. I had like one part of that whole crazy story. It was like, oh, his dad's probably a mutant, and it skipped over him. There was like a million other things that I was not expecting. So I would love to know what you guys thought about the revelations there, and of course what you guys thought about the episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.